Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video where I wish Witch Queen was already released but resort to Lost Ark until it does. But in today's video, we're going to take a look back because there were a lot of builds made over the course of Season of the Lost. And of course, some outshined the rest. I already covered this topic for the Warlocks and the Titans recently. Both of those videos will be down in the description if you're interested in them. But with both of those classes already covered, that just leaves out the Hunter. So let's talk about the 3 best Hunter builds for Season of the Lost. If you guys enjoy the video, give it a like. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Hunter build this season is. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and follow me over at my Twitch for more Destiny content. Also, all 3 builds that we'll be talking about in today's video will be down in the description as dim loadout links so you guys can easily copy and use them. To start things off, guys, the first build we're going to talk about is the Stasis Hunter. Season of the Lost really has been a hotspot for Stasis Hunter because of the mod focusing lens. This allows light subclass abilities to deal 25% more damage while an enemy is affected by stasis. This paired with the Revenant Hunter Super basically made it a better tether, because what tether does now, Silence and Squall can just do it better. Allow me to explain. Tether's gonna deal a single hit of damage that applies a 30% debuff to an enemy, versus Silence and Squall dealing constant damage, applying stasis, and opening up the team to use another debuff like Divinity, stacking just better overall. Another reason though why Stasis Hunter is by far the best Hunter subclass for PvE right now is its ability to be flexible in any content. Bungie really nailed it with the Aspect and Fragment system, because we can now use specific combos of aspects and fragments for specific content. For an example, we'll talk about probably the best stasis build you can run for any GM Nightfall in the game. The only thing needing to change are the weapons depending on what GM you bring it into. To keep it simple, the loadout I used was meant for the GM level Proving Grounds Nightfall. This strike on its own at the GM level difficulty is known very well for being quite difficult with parts like the tank room and the final boss. So what I was using was the exotic linear fusion rifle Arbalest so I could break any elemental shields and deal with anti-barrier champions. For the energy weapon, I was using an arc bow just to fit the fire team, and my heavy weapon was a threaded needle linear fusion rifle for unstoppable champions and DPS. On top of this, I was running the exotic arms Aeon Swift. This allows me to generate special and heavy ammo after I finish an enemy, but I found this build to be very open to what kind of exotic you can bring it with. If you're using an arc heavy weapon, you can use the Mask of Baccharis, or if you want to synergize with your stasis shards, you can use the Assassin's Cowl to go invisible and gain max HP after killing an enemy with your powered melee. Of course, guys, this can change all based on what GM you're bringing the build into, but for the aspects and fragments to use in this build, we're going to use Grim Harvest to create stasis shards whenever we defeat enemies affected by our stasis, and Touch of Winter to enhance the Duskfield Grenade. To then pair with the aspects, fragments like Whisper of Fissures for increased stasis detonation range and damage, Whisper of Durance for increased slow duration, Whisper of Bonds for super generation, Whisper of Chains for survivability, and Whisper of Conduction for gathering stasis shards from a further range are going to be the go-to for this build. But it's never bad to experiment with and change up depending on what you guys like. I also always prefer to use the harvest aspects because of how overpowered they are, because when you synergize it with the mod elemental shards, this basically turns any stasis shard we pick up every 10 seconds into a stasis elemental well. Then because it's considered an elemental well, we can use the mod elemental charge to make elemental shards give us 2 stacks of charge with light every 10 seconds. This will create a perfect source of charge with light stacks to focus on any stasis build around that you can think of. Mods like Firepower, Energy Converter, and Heavy Handed definitely come to mind. But for GM content where survivability is a must, Protective Light is going to be that resource spender of choice, because it gives 50% damage reduction for 10 seconds once shields break into red HP, at the cost of all current Charge with Light stacks. But because we're using elemental shards with elemental charge, we pretty much have this almost all the time. As for the rest of the build, a basis of elemental shards, elemental charge, plus a charge with light spender is going to be where it all starts. But definitely experiment with what you guys like. No matter what you guys do, adding on to it will just improve it. Moving over to the next build, it's going to be much more simple and bring hunters much closer to the mindset of a Titan main, and that's to punch really, really, really hard. Because who needs guns when you can just punch your way through any content in the game? The way that this build works is that we're using combination blows on Top Tree Arcstrider to buff our melee damage. This is going to increase our melee damage up to 310% at 3 stacks. This is then amplified by stacking the buff 1-2 punch to increase melee damage up to 200 to 350%, and a debuff like the freeze damage multiplier or tractor cannon. If everything is done right and everything is applied at once, it will just absolutely delete enemies and deal over 400,000 damage. For the build that I run with this, I use it to farm mostly Legend to Master Lost sectors. For the exotic, I use the Assassin's Cowl to synergize with Top Tree Arcstrider, because whenever we defeat something with our melee attack, it's going to proc combat flow, giving our dodge back. We can then use Gambler's Dodge to get our melee ability back and synergize really well with Assassin's Cowl exotic perk, basically giving us back HP and invisibility every time something dies to our melee ability, meaning we can do the 1-2 punch combo and immediately go invisible to do it again. As far as the loadout goes, any shotgun with 1-2 punch is going to work. I use a Found Verdict from Vault of Glass with auto-loading holster and 1-2 punch. But if you guys don't have one, the Wastelander from Dares of Eternity, the One Small Step from the Moon, and the Deicide from Umbral Engrams are all very easy to earn shotguns that can roll 1-2 punch. For the debuff weapon of choice, I use the Zephyr Sword from the Dawning Event with the perk Cold Steel. This is going to allow me to synergize with mods like Focusing Lens, Passive Guard, and also Disrupt Overload champions. However, I am aware this weapon isn't obtainable at this given moment, so using weapons like Cryosthesia, Ager's Scepter, or Tractor Cannon will do close to, if not the exact same thing. As for the kinetic weapon, it really doesn't matter in this build, so anything that will deal with champions will just get the job done. But for the mods of the build, because we're focusing around the melee attack, we're going to start the build with Melee Wellmaker to create an Arc Elemental Well every time we kill something with combination blows. Then we're going to use Elemental Charge to gain 2 stacks of charge with light from it, Well of Ions to make our next melee attack deal 30% more damage after picking it up, and Protective Light as a safety net with the charge with light stacks. Overall, this build makes farming exotics a breeze, and definitely will be one build that I'll bring into Witch Queen to farm out those sweet, sweet new exotic arms. Moving over to the third and final build, before I even start out, it's going to heavily change once Witch Queen comes out with Void 3.0. But Tether Hunter in its current state is still a huge contender when it comes to endgame content. More specifically, its ability to make your entire team, including themselves, invisible, and in some cases also gain a damage resistance buff. The exotic chest piece Omnioculus is definitely one of the key components when it comes down to sheer survivability Hunter. Its perk gives the Hunter a second smoke bomb, gives damage resistance to those who are smoked by it, and returns smoke energy back based on how many people were smoked, including the Hunter themselves. This build will actually be even better once Void 3.0 comes out, since it was confirmed that Lockdown from Bottom Tree Tether Hunter and Suppressive Darkness, the mod, will be returning as fragments for Void 3.0. The only downside is that combat provisions will be either removed or reworked from giving melee energy back after damaging enemies with a grenade, to Echo of Exchange giving grenade energy after getting kills with a melee. That's enough of Void 3.0 for now though. I'll break it down more once I actually get my hands on it in a few weeks. For the build that I run GMs with this, I use the mods Taking Charge to get stacks of charge with light, protective light as usual, but to also spend the stacks of charged with light on, I use a firepower mod to gain grenade energy back every time I throw one at the cost of 1 stack of charged with light. Because this could clash with protective light and sometimes leave me vulnerable, I pair this with stacks on stacks to make every orb of power give 2 stacks of charged with light instead of 1. You could also double up on firepower if you feel like you're getting enough stacks of charged with light, but I feel that comes down to preference. As for the rest of the build, mods like particle deconstruction for fusion rifles, linear fusion rifle DPS, focusing lens if there is a stasis subclass present, bomber for grenade energy back after dodging, and innervation for more grenade energy after picking up orbs are present in this build. Feel free though guys to use these builds as templates for your own builds since they aren't going to be a cure-all for all content. Pay attention to champions, shield typing, and what kind of strategy your teammates want to run. But anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.